everyone, it's the History Nerd, back for some more Civ 5 German action. I was gonna wait and do some Austria today, but when I read the comments, I was just absolutely blown away by the questions that were asked today. So, as I was writing down my answers, I'm like, no, you know what, we're gonna answer these right now. Because there were some really, really good ones that I got really excited about answering. So, thank you guys very much for giving me some exciting talking points here. Yes. We've got Munich back, whatever. We remember what you did to us, China. We never forget. But holy crap, do we ever need to hit the Spanish. Alright, so on to the comments. Hector, I'm glad you're excited. You guys, you and Mr. Awesome Boy are absolutely 100% correct. We need to get Spain. Because they're gonna kill us, which is not good. I really want to live. So let's concentrate on getting the Spanish. I think Barcelona, at the very least, will be a very nice addition to the Empire. So, oh yes, will it ever. So that's going to have to be taken. No question about it, we are going to need Barcelona. Thankfully, now that I've been able to make peace with the Chinese, we should be able to make a good solid push down south. I've got iron units coming out of both of these cities. Well, I'll be able to get iron units coming out of both of these cities. And then we should be able to make a good solid push into Barcelona. And then from there, who knows? You know? The real trick at the moment, though, is going to be hacking through this incredible military that Spain has thrown out in front of us. 1, 2. Damn. Okay. So if we go like that, maybe. No, we'll keep them there for now. We'll get our general down here, though. Right into the thick of the fight. And we shouldn't have to worry about anything coming from the north. I do have to say, one of the wishes I had was... Whoa, almost spilt my Diet Coke. Was the ability to draft units. It's been there in other Civ games, and right now I could really use the ability to change some of this population directly into military units. Because things are not going well for Germany. But it's okay. Like in history... you know, we're basically Prussia, if we're you know, so, you know, I don't know, China. Sure, I guess when you attack me in 10 turns, that'll show the rest of the players, or the rest of the civs, just what a hypocrite you are. Which is always good. Monty Productions, Inc. I did enjoy Smoky Skies, so, you know what? When I'm done with this German game, I would love to give another Civ scenario a try. Hold on 2 seconds here. Sorry about that. My cat, who, his name, by the way, is Goebbels. Don't get on my case about naming my cat after a Nazi. Please, I am not myself a Nazi. I just thought it was a damn funny name to give a pet. And unfortunately, it stuck. He likes to make a home for himself in my dryer, and because I've got a stacking dryer. So what he'll do is he'll sit and look at the dryer and just meow his head off until I open it for him. So I'm trying to break that habit of him, and it's not going well. But just in the background, I can hear this meow, meow, meow. It's the one downside to owning a cat is that they communicate in a highly annoying way. Supposedly they evolved to do that. Now, a cat's meow is fairly close to the same pitch as a human baby's meow. So our brains and our ears are just naturally attuned to hearing that pitch. And so apparently cats developed to, oh, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. I don't need them coming for me. Cats developed to have their meows match that, so we can never ignore them. Damn creatures. Alright, so yeah, I would love to give that Roman scenario a try. When I'm done with Germany, we'll give it a shot, because you know what, those little Civ scenarios, they're pretty fun. And Smoky Skies was a blast. That was just a really cool scenario that they made. I really hope my mic isn't picking that up, because damn, that's annoying. Really good questions, too. When I read these, I got really excited. Because I haven't given much thought lately to Rome, especially the transition from Republic to Empire. Now, I don't know if you've seen the HBO series Rome. If you haven't, I highly recommend picking it up. It is a very well done series, and it goes into, not so much your questions here, but it goes into that time period very, very well. At least the first question about Julius Caesar. Or Kaiser, if you want to get sticky about Latin. I didn't do well in Latin, so I don't particularly want to. Sorry, staring down my cat. So here's why I think we should go with accuracy, because most of the units we're going to be hitting are out in the open. Here's why I think the transition, or when Caesar was killed, the Romans didn't transition back to a republic. During Caesar's reign, he was incredibly effective at consolidating his power and developing his power so that it benefited his position. And why it worked so well for him was because he was able to make Rome more successful than it was in the later stages of the Republican time. During the later stages of the Republican time, it was incredibly corrupt, and it was very, very obvious that people like the senators, no, were not focused on the needs of the plebs, or the needs of the average people. They were focused on the needs of themselves. And so what Caesar does is, while he consolidates his power, whether it's illusion, whether it's an imagined advantage to the people or not, because, I mean, for this Roman stuff, we're all going off the historical record. And at this time, most of the historical record is going to be written by emperors, or people who directly benefit from making the emperors look good. I guess not even emperors at this time, but people in power. And so you get this development of a system that's a bit more effective than the corrupt and bloated and inefficient Republic era. So when Caesar's killed, the Second Triumvirate comes along, and the first thing they do is they adopt the same sort of power structure that was instituted by Caesar. And specifically, Octavian and Mark Antony go after the group of Romans who were opposed to Caesar, and they go through and they basically avenge Caesar's death. Now, after this, they're not really effective. Mark Antony and Octavian are not really effective at power sharing. And as we see, Augustus, Octavian comes along, defeats Mark Antony, and then declares himself emperor and adopts the name Augustus. Now, Augustus was brilliant. Once he took power, he followed Caesar's example and made sure to have the plebs happy. And happy plebs make for a safer empire and a more stable empire. And quite effectively, Octavian, or Augustus, I'm going to use both names interchangeably here, so, just know that either one, I mean the same guy. He make sure that Imperial Rome, that what he sets up, is far more effective. And so the plebs living in this time can look back to the last stages of the Republican era and say, you know, it was basically a bunch of civil war, people didn't care about us, and times were really, 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 really bad. And now, with Octavian, times for the average Roman, they're pretty good. Things are going rather well for them. So, the public supports and loves and wants to continue the imperial times because, quite frankly, they're good. And this is why you don't see a return to the Republican system, because the Republican system was proved to be not at all effective in dealing with what the plebs wanted. Whereas Imperial Rome, and you've got to remember too, the mindset of Roman people and Roman culture is different from what we've got today, right? Well, today we sit there and we care about things like not killing innocents. We realize that really all humans are pretty much the same, and at least on a base societal level, you know, for the most part, it still happens today that you know, you get people who are like, oh, those dirty X group of people, they don't deserve to live, and we're obviously better than, you know, Y group of people because we're just better, and things like that. That's always going to happen with humanity, but for the most part, our societies today have developed to the point where we don't line up in streets and demand our governments go to war with people just because that means it's going to be better for us. We like to think that there are better ways than asserting our will forcefully. Back in Rome, no, it wasn't like that. Romans believed Romans were the best, and whatever was best for Romans was considered great. So, with the imperial period, you see this focus on making Rome great. And as that focus develops, things actually do become great for Rome. So the popular support is behind enhancing and continuing this imperial process because things are great for Rome. So that's why you don't see a shift back, I think, to the Republican era, because quite frankly, Imperial Rome, for the most part, for most Romans, was a hell of a lot better. And they honestly didn't really care about having the political say, because when they had political say, it was useless. That's what I think, anyway. I could be totally wrong on that. I'm certainly no expert on Roman history, but that's just my gut feeling, is that, yeah, just things were better. And now, here's something that I know a bit more about, is the Eastern Roman Empire, and how it was able to survive when the West wasn't. And this stems from... I knew a little bit about the Eastern Roman Empire, mainly from playing Paradox games before I went to university. I took some Crusades courses and some medieval history, so I got to learn a bit more about the Eastern Roman Empire, and sort of piece together on my own how it was able to survive. So, going way back to around the 300s. Well, I mean, even before then, the wealthy sections of the empire were in the east. This was where all the food came from. This was where most of the troops came from. This was where a lot of the raw materials came from. It was basically the heart of the empire. Whereas the western bit, true, it's where Rome was based, but really, during this time, the power of the world, the rich center of the world. Like today, it's in Western Europe and North America, although that's really starting to shift. For the 19th and 20th centuries, we'll say. Well, even longer than that, but really you can see it for the 19th and 20th centuries, the main section of the world where a lot of the developments, where a lot of power was coming from, you know, Western Europe and North America. The same thing way back then was going on in the eastern section of the Roman Empire. And so the power of Rome always stemmed from the east. And now Emperor Constantine, I think, really realized this, and this is why he went ahead and set up the new Roman capital in Constantinople, well, in Byzantium, and he renamed it to Constantinople because he was a little bit of an arrogant guy. But he's an emperor, so why did I do that? Well, I do need money. I really should have made more units there. Oh well. So once Constantinople was set, and really this is a perspective I don't think a lot of people get, because it's not really all that well covered. But with the shift to Constantinople, I mean, that became the capital of the empire. Sure, Rome was always sort of the you know, like the heartland, the ideological capital, I guess, sort of the capital city. But all of the power, all of the money, all of this was definitely centered in Constantinople, at least by 400. Maybe not in 320 or 325-ish. I think that's when the capital moved. That's also the Council of Nicaea, so I could be getting those two dates confused here. But certainly by 400, most of the power of Rome is coming from the east. And so when... Let me gather my thoughts here for a moment. When the western part starts to crumble, it's not as devastating to the empire as we think it is today. Certainly, the loss of Rome and the western provinces was a hindrance, right? And especially with emperors like Justinian, you see this desire to bring back the Roman Empire. Under one unified empire. But really, they become two distinct but connected political groups or political entities, and we're just gonna heal up the units and then make a push for Barcelona here. I think we should have enough to do that. So when the Visigoths sack Rome and really bring an end to the Western Empire, I mean, the Western side was already in pretty big decline by this point. So, you know, when Rome finally does fall, it's not as devastating. The empire is still able, for the most part, to continue because, you know, its base is in the east. So yeah, it's just a matter of, with our understanding, because as Western Europeans, and I'm speaking for North Americans here too, until we land here, we're Western Europeans, so our ancient history is identical. We like to look at the Western Europeans and say, well, you know, that was us, and we were the most important part. We weren't. We were a backwater. You know, yeah, Gaul and Iberia and Germania, they were, you know, people were there, stuff was happening there, certainly wealth was being generated out of there, and no, we want Barcelona. Alright, let's get you up there, you in there, get the general up. And where can we do the most damage on that guy? Yeah, so, sorry, a little bit of a sidetrack, but Britannia. You know, there's always the thought that Britannia was the wild, untamed lands, and, that it was, you know, basically full of barbarians and generally a poor area. It really wasn't. It was a relatively, you know, I mean, it was important, but it none of the western provinces ever really amounted to the same sort of power that was coming from the east. So, yes, wonderful. So, yeah. Basically, to sum up this rant about the Eastern Roman Empire, by the year 400, think of them as two distinct political groups, and that should kind of explain why. Oh, come on. Why when Rome fell, the East was still able to go on. Basically, it was a hiccup for the Eastern Roman Empire, but it was never really as devastating as we like to think it was. So yeah. There you go. That's why, in my opinion. And again, I'm no expert on any of this. This is all just what I think. But from what I've seen of the history of the area of the time, that's definitely the feelings I come away with. Is that, quite frankly, the Western Empire was just a different empire, and while they shared a lot of connections and trade and things like that, they were two distinct entities by this time. And, yeah, it wasn't important for the East. They were able to continue on. Comrade Dan, you're a loyalist. Love to hear it. I'm glad I'm not alone. Believe me, living in North America, sometimes it feels like it. Modernization of Japan, another very interesting period. Now, there's kind of two, right? There's Portuguese contact, but it didn't really last, right? The Portuguese sort of made contact. There was a bit of trade, but then Japan was like, whoa, hold up. Shut her down. And that's really where it ended. Portugal was far more interested in pushing into other areas of Asia, and Japan, you know, it was very far away. It was about as far east as you could go, really, and it was difficult to get to. So, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal once the Japanese closed off the borders. Then in the 19th century, we get Commodore Perry, who sails in there and is basically like, guess what, Japan, you're opening your ports, you don't have a choice. And from that, we got a very interesting development for Japan. Because first off, initially, right, you've got the groups of traditionalists who are like, hold on a second, do we really want to make these changes? Do we really want to give up on so many of our values just to modernize? And then you've also got the groups who are like, yeah, we do want to give up on our values to modernize. Look at the people who are coming over here. They are light years ahead of us technologically. They are light years ahead of us militarily. We don't have a hope in hell of standing up to these people if we continue to keep our borders closed and ignoring what's going on in the world. And so I don't usually recommend Tom Cruise movies, ever. You know, but his Last Samurai, I'm not saying it's great, but it at least addresses some of those initial changes that are going on in Japan, and it's actually an entertaining movie, I think anyway. So if you're interested in this, check that movie out to at least get like just a baseline. Don't do it thinking that, you know, this is going to be a documentary. It's not. But at least it provides some interesting insight, and it can give you some understanding as to what's going on with the Japanese at this time. But once you know, the modernizing side wins, and the Japanese are like, okay, you know what? Yeah, we are going to modernize. Deal with it. We see a very interesting modernization process in Japan. First off, it's not a colonial process. Instead of most of the quote-unquote modernization going on in Asia at the time, which is definitely a colonial process, where Western powers come in and assert their dominance, Japan reaches out to the West and says, how can you help us? And they do it in a very, very interesting way. We're going to move this guy to Berlin, because we need defense. They go out to the leaders of Western society in certain areas to get their modernization strategies underway. So for the military, they go to Prussia. For economy and for industry, they go to America. For political advances and developments, they go to Britain, and they say, what do you do that works? Let's take a look at your systems and see what we can take from that, apply it to Japanese culture and society, and come up with a hybrid model to figure out how we're going to bring Japan into the 19th or the 20th century, how we're going to modernize Japan. Sorry, I've got a lot of notes for these questions. So I got about 2 and a bit pages to go through here. So, let me get caught up. Okay, so because Japan did this, they avoided the colonial process of Western powers coming and imposing their will, and they were able to take aspects of Western society, Western technology, Western culture, Western ideals, apply them to current Japanese society, and come up with a hybrid model so that they can get both. They can get the best of both worlds and create their own new identity as a modern industrialized nation that's Asian. And indeed, what you see as Japan adopts this policy, more units. As Japan adopts this policy, they go on their own colonial adventures in Asia. So they go into Korea, they go into sections of China, they go up against the Russians and win to expand their influence in the Pacific. It's an absolutely brilliant and amazing historical example of modernization, where it's a combination of foreign ideas and homegrown ideas meshed together to really achieve a very successful result. It's absolutely amazing what Japan is able to pull off here. And I think the saddest thing about this is you can see diplomatically all Japan wants, really, is to be accepted as equals to the Western powers. And so in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this is what you see. This is what is driving Japanese advancements. Advancements in expanding their sphere of influence. Is basically, they just want to be another empire. And honestly, you can't really blame them. Because I think they can see how successful the Western powers are and how powerful the Western powers are, and they realize the best way to achieve our goals here is to follow this example and make our own Western empire in the East. The unfortunate thing is, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a lot of this advancement and development is based upon ideas of, you know, Western race superiority. So when you've got an Eastern Empire who's coming along and being like, hey, we can do this too, the West is kind of like, no, you can't because you're not white. And ultimately, this is why you see Japan go on its tear in the early stages of the 20th century. Well, I do... Whoa! 11 iron? I do want to take some Spanish cities, but... Whew! That's a good deal. We're going to accept that, and we're going to use the iron that we get from Spain here to really build up so we can push against Spain. Oh, excuse me. So this is why you see Japan ultimately leave the League of Nations and, you know, expand on their own, much to the chagrin of the West, who are kind of like, but this isn't what we want. You know, the world and empires are a Western thing. We don't want non-Western empires expanding. And ultimately, this is what leads to... No. Well, don't attack me. Then maybe we can be friends. The trick here, unfortunately, is going to be getting my units into Barcelona. It's bad enough that we're going to have to cross rivers here. But once we get healed up, I'm thinking keeping the siege units on this side and then getting the infantry on that. Basic capturing city routines. Anyway, so yes, in the 20th century, Japan goes on this spree that's much against what the West wants in the region. And this is why you see Japan doing what it does in the 1920s and 30s, pushing further into China, really going up against the Koreans, pushing into the Pacific regions, going up against the empires of the time, mainly Britain and America, and pushing into those areas of influence to come away with their own empire. Drama and poetry. So yeah, I think that covers that. It does. And, Comrade Dan, I really wish... Yes. I really wish we called our upper house the House of Lords. Unfortunately, it's the Senate. But, you know, it's just a name, really. And, I firmly do believe that... Excuse me. Might be coming down with a cold, stupid weather. I firmly believe that, Okay, whoa, not quite what I wanted to do, but whatever. Move you up, you can heal there. Down, down. Up onto the hills. We should also try and get some defensive units along here, just in case the Chinese decide to come back for round 2. Yeah, I really do think that the unelected officials do have the people's best interests at heart, purely because if they don't, they're gonna lose their jobs. And, you know, unlike you know, some elected officials who can say, oh well, we're doing this for the people, but then also adopt, you know, ideas and values that personally benefit them. Unelected officials who are there because of their position in society are already in a very good position. And they're not really about to give that up. Also, there's not really much that can attract them to not follow what they already want to do. It's really tough to buy someone off who's already rich, who's already got a position of power, and who is set, comfortable, and has it all already. You can't really buy someone off if they can't be bought, right? So that's why I think the unelected chamber is very important. Now, it's also important to have an elected chamber. There's no question about it. People need to have their voices heard, and for the most part, Suleiman, nope. For the most part, nope. You know, their interests are going to be their own selfish interest, which is keep myself in power. How are you going to do that the most effective way? Don't piss off people so they'll revolt. Plain and simple, right? Seems to make sense in my head anyway. Yes. Covered my cat's name. And honestly, Great Britain's just a political hipster. They do everything before it's cool. Take a look at the Magna Carta, right? It's not like a fully elected body of officials, but it's an elected king. You know, and that happens well before anyone else thinks. Well, not well before, but, you know, there was the time when there was elected governments, and then you get the imperial periods, especially with Imperial Rome, and then after that, you get the king periods, and pretty much all the kings focus on becoming more and more centralized with their power, except in Great Britain, where they're kind of like, well, we gotta have the power sharing. And, you know, it's just interesting to see Britain develop that way. Because they're always, and honestly, I think it stems from Anglo-Saxon traditions. They had kings in ye olden times, right, before Rome comes along. But you know, there's we don't have a lot of written evidence for the pre-Roman Britain. What little we do have, and the archaeological evidence, kind of points to more of a decentralized society, where you've got a bunch of regional mini-kings, I guess is the way to put it, and they kind of elect however they elect it. They kind of, quote-unquote, elect one king to be sort of the king of kings. Not in a religious way, literally in a political way, he's the king of kings. And, yeah, it's interesting, because Great Britain always seems to be slightly ahead of the trend, and, yeah, it's why I find them so fascinating. And then, yeah, so the example of the 1910 crisis there. Situations like that, in a lot of political systems, would lead to revolution and violence. In Britain, it leads to a lot of heated debate, a lot of talking, but ultimately coming to a solution, while not satisfying everybody, or indeed even the people who come up with the idea. It satisfies most of the needs of what the people who want change want, but it doesn't achieve everything, because achieving everything wouldn't be good for everyone. The parliamentary system is a great way to come to a consensus, to bring about change that helps most people. And I think that's why it works, is because it's not perfect, right? It's not perfect, it's not quote-unquote ideal, but because of that, it's not absolute. It's not, you know, it's not direct. It's no, Spain. We're not going to open borders. You know, it's all about compromise within the political system, and I think that's why it works. So yeah, so that's my opinion on that. And Skyfall, man, great movie. Great movie. Absolutely. Daniel Craig did an amazing job. What I liked about it was that it's kind of playing on the idea that James Bond's getting old. And I think Craig's signed on for at least one last movie, so we're going to get one more where Bond's like this grizzled old vet who's like, oh, this is how we did it in my day. And, you know, I really liked how Craig played that. Alright, so now it's pretty much time to go to war with Spain here. Yeah, head up there. The one thing that, and I really did almost shed a tear over this, was the loss of the DB5. That, oh yes, that was probably one of the saddest moments ever in a James Bond movie for me. Because that car, it's like, that car is Bond, right? With the ejection with the ejection seat and the machine guns, I mean, that car was Bond, and to see it just destroyed, man, that made me sad. I was like, oh no, what are you doing? That's a beautiful car, and you just destroyed it. So hopefully it makes a comeback. One of the biggest surprises for me, though, a lot of the recent James Bonds, basically since the fall of the Soviet Union, I haven't been that big of a fan of James Bond's, because in my head, Bond needs to fight the Russians, right? And so, like, in GoldenEye, he did, and, you know, it's okay, whatever. But as it shifted more and more towards the whole terrorists are the enemy, I was just kind of like, it's starting to feel a bit contrived. Like, it doesn't feel like James Bond, it just feels like action movies with thankfully a British hero instead of the typical American hero, but it didn't really feel like it. The villain in Skyfall? Holy crap! Back to a diabolical Bond evil genius? Man, that was brilliant! I absolutely loved the villain in Skyfall. Made me just, like, it's the first Bond villain in a very, very long time when I've been like, oh, you're like evil but diabolically, and you've got a reason, and there's backstory, and there's like, here's why you're doing this. It was amazing. So yeah, big fan of Skyfall. If you haven't seen it yet, sorry for spoiling about the DB5, but go see it. It's one of the best Bond movies made. The only other little thought I had when they went back, or when they went to Skyfall, I kind of wished, and I know they couldn't, and I know, you know, we're not at war with China, are we? Why? Come on. Okay, good, we're not. I kind of wish Sean Connery played the role of the landskeeper, or the groundskeeper. But, you know, he's retired from acting, is apparently what's going on with Connery, so that's why he didn't. And I mean, really, could you put Sean Connery in a James Bond film today? I don't know, but a part of me kind of wished that happened. But, you know, it didn't, so such is life. You can't win them all. Can we open up borders here? Sold. That's gonna make this easier. Alright. So, thank you guys for those amazing questions. When I saw those and got my answers down, I was like, okay, you know what? Screw it. I've got to record this now, before even more stuff gets written down, because, yeah, I knew it would take me a while to get through all the answers. So thank you guys. Awesome. More questions like that would be amazing. This is kind of why I got the whole channel started, was so that I could discuss history stuff like this. So keep them coming. Absolutely amazing. And again, with everything that I'm saying in these Q&As, you know, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's correct. It's been so long since I've actually done any real historical research that I could be just spouting out a whole bunch of incorrect facts. And if that's the case, please correct me. And if you disagree with what I say, post it below, and let's get a discussion, because really the only way... Why did we adopt... Well, I guess we haven't even founded a religion yet. Sure is taking a long time to do that. Anything I say is always open for debate. If you guys don't agree, if you guys have a differing view, post it, and let's talk it out, because that's the best way to discuss history. And considering how long this video's gone, haven't really made too much progress with this war, but I think I'm going to end the video on this next turn. And why wouldn't they have hit the catapult? That just doesn't make any sense. I guess really I did throw that unit away. Okay, so we should... Can I not upgrade him now that he's shot? Interesting. We should get you working on units. And we should cover our siege weapons. And yeah, because I've been jibber-jabbering for so long here, I haven't really been focusing on strategy. I've just been moving units around, so I should probably focus on that. But yeah, again, guys, thank you for all the good questions. This has been probably one of my most enjoyable episodes to record. So, keep them coming. I loved it. Thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. I hope you guys have. Leave more comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, jokes, musings, what have you below. Counterpoints, arguments, whatever you want. Thank you all very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.